This is Overtime, a weekly moment of off-the-cuff commentary on everything from sports and politics to observations about everyday life from NFL All-Pro Carl Lee. Welcome to Overtime.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back for my overtime session. We're going to kind of pick up from where the Let's Talk show had left off. We're going to try to come back in and try to get a couple of different topics that I think we didn't get a chance to get earlier on. So, Dana Farrell, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dana Farrell, as you said, and
tell us all the good stuff.
I've got 3 or 4 hats that I wear, and obviously the one I'm wearing tonight, obviously being here as representative in the House of Delegates and represent Northern Kanawha County in the 60th District here, and former coach, taught and coached 30 years in Kanawha County, and then gravitated as I was ending up my teaching career, started a business in sports media, and that's what I'm doing full-time now when I'm not in the legislature, running RSN Sports Network. So been in and around, and as you said, work with you off and on the last few years, so you know the gig.
All right, so we have talked and we have touched on, like, in depth about the transfer. And I don't see any kind of way, when I look at the scores of opening week, I don't see any way that it's working. And if it's working, it's only working for a few schools. And if it's a benefit, then it is only benefiting a few schools, because you're looking at a school like St. Albans who may not even be able to field a team. Mm-hmm. You know, when that's a problem.
Right.
So I hear that potentially there is a fight about to be taken on by you to reverse it, change it, do something with it. Help us out with what you're trying to do.
And Delegate, before you state particularly your intentions, tell us a little bit about what the bill is, how it's currently being formation, and then tell us what you plan to do.
Good point. I was going to go there anyhow.
Okay,
let's backtrack and let's figure out how we got here, and let's go back. This bill came about after a particular, I'm not going to name names, but a particular senator from the Northern Panhandle.
He's been named on the show before. He's been named.
I won't name him, but you guys can do that. But he was coaching. My understanding is he was coaching baseball in a particular private school there in Northern Panhandle, and there were 3 baseball players from a public school that wanted to move over, and SSAC denied that transfer. And from that point on, there was a lawsuit that instilled, and then consequently the legislation come about, and it was that, hey, okay, we're going to change this. He has a right to do that, absolutely. But I think, trying to fix an isolated anecdotal situation has caused repercussions all the way southbound from Weirton to Bluefield, and all the way across the state and beyond. And he had actually sponsored the same legislation 2 previous years, and we stopped it in the House of Delegates.
Yeah, I did hear that.
And so it had been defeated, and it was on its way to be defeated again this year. We had stopped it. It was parked on the House agenda, so it was not going to be come up. And then the last day of session, he convinced the chair of education in the Senate to attach this entire defunct bill that we didn't want onto what he felt was a popular Hope Scholarship eligibility bill, HB 2820, and that bill come before the House, and it went to the Senate, 2820 did, and they made this change. So anytime you make a change in a bill, it has to go to the other chamber for concurrence or agreement, and if we do not agree with that, then basically it has to go to basically a conference where you send representatives and you try to hash out some type of compromise. The problem is when that's going on the last day, there's just not time to do that. So if we do not concur on that bill, it's dead. And the House members, most of them knew that, and they are so focused on anything Hope Scholarship. Nobody, I wouldn't say nobody, but a majority of them did not want to take a voting against Hope Scholarship eligibility, including the governor on this. And even though they knew, it's kind of like hold your nose, hit the green button, and vote and get it through, and hope that it's not going to be as bad as we said it was going to be. But I would argue here tonight, it's as bad, maybe worse than we said it was going to be, and we're seeing that play out.
But do they see it? Like, are there politicians sitting there looking at this and saying, "Ooh, this is really bad"? Are we there already?
Well, there again, we have been that was the last day of session. We dismissed and went out. We've had a few interims, and then we had a little bit of special session. I can tell you here at the 1st of August when we were in here for 2 days during special session, I did lobby the fact that I was going to run a bill to reverse that part of it. Now, the entire 28-20, I'm not messing with the Hope Scholarship part of it. That's said and done, but it's an issue in itself. But this transfer portal part of it is so bad. We already knew at that point. I felt like, I talked to a lot of the delegates, and if you think about it, the way the government's set up, senators, where this derived out of, they represent multiple districts, multiple counties, sometimes multiple high schools. They're a little higher up, further removed, so it doesn't affect them in the same way. But when you're a delegate, you're the delegate. I'm the delegate at Sissonville High School and part of South Charleston. That's what I represent. I'm on the ground. I see those people in my grocery store, and they see and tell me about it. I go to church with them. As a Senate, it's not quite, you're a little bit further removed. And the forefathers designed it that way. We need to have both angles coming in. But I can assure you that when we come back in here in January, what we're seeing just after this first week, this is going to get worse.
Absolutely.
And let me ask a question. So when you say you plan to issue something to defeat the current transfer rules, are you going to do something, do you mean like just totally nix it? Or is it going to be something that you're going to want to modify?
Good question. We'll have to run a separate bill to reverse the damage that was done. So the first thing we want to do is let's get back to where we were. If we can make a tweak or a modification to make it better, and we'll consult with coaches and the SSAC to see if we can do that. There is the question about what do you do about the athletes that have already transferred, and that's something we'll hash out. But I'm right now, I think lean is, hey, they've made their move, let them stay there. Because if you say, well, allow them to come back, now a student athlete at St. Albans or Riverside or wherever has stepped up, worked hard to get in that position, and this kid comes back and bumps them out, and it's even more damage done.
But let me ask this question: what if it's like St. Albans and they ended up forfeiting a season, the rest of this season? What do you do about those kids who left? I mean, because now, so I really believe that it's something that needs to be specific according to the situation.
Well, I do understand, and I say this, when we looked at, when I argued on the floor about, this bill is that, individual kids, sometimes, there's a coach that and they need to transfer. Well, the SSAC has an appeals process, and I don't know the number that actually appealed last year, but 80% of those appeals were approved. And so there is a process to look at specific situations, if there's a hardship or an academic or something, that be there, and that will continue to be. But just for open the floodgates, anybody to go where they went on the notion that, like you said, what are we teaching the young people, to be about themselves? I thought we were a state of small communities, and the high schools in those small communities are the cornerstones of those communities, and this is destructive to the viability of those schools. Well, and I will argue it all day home.
Let me ask, so we do have like what's called an ex post facto. You can't punish somebody for what was illegal at the time, so we can't reverse it.
Right.
But what I will say is that, to that point, this is also America, and shouldn't that athlete, because if we're talking about an art student, and GW doesn't have a good art program, and Capital has the art program, I don't think anybody would blink an eye if that artist wanted to go to the school with the better art or liberal art program. What I'm saying is, though, why are we, why this is America, you should be able to go with what's going to be best for you. And we're only talking about one time. We're not talking about multiple transfers.
Let me ask you this question. Okay, are you in this? Are you asking that question as a question for Dana to answer, or are you asking this question as if you buy in? No, wait.
I'm asking for
that you buy in to what you said.
No,
to the question
I
that you
definitely buy into what I say.
Okay,
but I'm asking.
I wanted to
I'm
question
asking
that
as a
first.
question because I think that's some of the obviously the questions he's going to get as a representative and one of our delegates.
Well, I've already got it. That point was made on the House of Delegates floor back in March when this bill, and we argued this for an hour on the House floor on the last day of session. And at that point was, these people, why shouldn't they have the freedom? And it was touted, this is a freedom bill. To be able to choose, why are we denying these kids the freedom to be able to go wherever they choose, they feel they can better themselves?
I would say this: if you get on a football team, you get on an athletic team, you go to a school. I don't know, and maybe it's just me. I don't know how you don't buy into that school, why you don't buy into that team, why you are not if I'm playing with Harold Pinnell and Jeff Mallory and all these guys from South Charleston, I'm not leaving. I don't understand why I would ever think about leaving South Charleston.
That situation is not good for them. So that's kind of an easy answer.
Okay, but when you say that, if it's academic,
no, if it's athletic, forget academics. I'm not saying forget academics. I'm saying we're focusing on athletics. So if it doesn't work out for me athletic, and that's my vocation, then I should be able to go where I want to go.
If you're the star of the team, if you're one of the best players on the team, what is it that's not working out? You're not winning?
It could be coaching. It could be not winning. You couldn't be maybe using your talent.
Okay, so not winning, and a coach.
You just picked those two.
Not winning. Yeah, no, you didn't. Not winning and the coach. Not winning and the coach. Those two, in a sense, kind of go together.
Maybe. I don't know.
But maybe it's the kid.
Maybe too. You could be right about that too. So maybe that kid doesn't fit into that program, and he need to go somewhere else where he fit in.
All right. So let me step in here too. You asked the question.
We always are.
And I made the point that SSAC, if it's a particular hardship case and a particular thing, maybe the kid's getting bullied, or it could be a social issue at school.
Justified.
It could be, and like I said, most of those when they appealed them, they were approved and they were allowed to move. And we know, and it was before I think we came back on, we know the recruiting thing and kids bouncing around and manipulating the rule has been going on for years.
Yeah.
What we did was just open border it. I mean, we just said, okay, it's just, and that's what I told them, just because people are sneaking across the southern border doesn't mean that we're just going to open the floodgates and just let everybody in. That's dangerous. And in this situation here, I think it's the same, just saying to everybody, you can just go where you want. And I understand when your freedom impedes the well-being of others, you have to start saying, okay, at what level or what limit does your freedom have limitations because it's hurting other people?
Your freedom ends where somebody else's nose begins.
And let me say this. And you said it earlier on, there aren't any winners in this. Even the schools that think they're benefiting from this. We don't have to name them. I think everybody sees who they are and where it's going. A lot of them were named SSAC on a recruiting thing last week. But even if they think they are, I'm hearing from parents who came up, raised their kids in a system, worked the concession stand, supported the boosters, and finally it's their kid's chance to step on the field and get in the limelight. And then a kid transfers in, boom, just out of that, that doesn't even live in the community and bumps them out of the lineup. How is that? Did somebody? Is there a victim there? Is at the end of the day, now that kid, and we're seeing this too. Those kids now are looking around. Well, where can I go to find playing time? I don't want to transfer, but I've got to if I want to be able to play. And so we got this domino effect going on, around here in the Kanawha Valley right now. And I just say, even those schools, when you start splitting a community and the community spirit up, and the Friday night lights, and what brings a community together, when you start driving that kind of situation, there are no winners.
Okay, and let me ask this question. When we start talking about transfer kids, let's just be open and honest here. All right, when we start talking about the transfer kids, to your point about if I'm not playing at a school, if you ain't playing at a school, you ain't transferring. Okay, so we don't even need to even use that. Because we act like there's a place for that. There's no kid who's not playing on South Charleston who is going to transfer anywhere if they can't play. Because if they're not playing there, what's going to make you think you're going to play in Morgantown? What's going to make you think you can play in Hurricane if you can't play at Cat?
There's a lot of people that do that.
You know, so I'm making the case. That it is the talented kids. It's the most talented kids, or the most talented kids, or the better kids on a team that transfer. So we shouldn't even use the example of little Johnny. It's going to transfer, and he's likely going to try out for Morgantown, because that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, I'm not going to Huntington. I'm not letting my little grandson to go to Huntington because I don't like South Charleston, and put him in the program at Huntington when he couldn't fit in. He couldn't get on the field. Unless I'm trying to blame the coach, you know, unless I'm blaming the coach. Coach isn't playing my son. And we get and we get all that. So the bill only affects the top players.
Right. Well,
and we know that.
Oh, I disagree with that. I think there's a lot of kids that can't play.
Well, it
transfer someplace to.
Well, let me say this.
They go to someplace to get
goes back to what
job.
I just said in the previous comments, in that it affects kids downstream. I mean, because when that kid transfers in, he's bumping another kid that would have started.
Yes.
And now that kid's either sitting in the pine or cut
and
off
he may want to leave. Yes, but that's the trickle effect to how bad this is.
And let me ask a policy question. So, a scenario in which the SSAC could they overrule the legislation?
No, that's state law.
So they would have to abide by that as a policy point.
And let me say this too. There was a law. I want to say a bill that came through. It passed through the House. I think the governor vetoed it. Thank goodness. But it was calling for an annual audit on the SSAC, and I coached, like I said, across 30 years in Kanawha County. I'm up there, and I'm around the sport every day. I think there's this tendency in the legislature at times, and around the general public, to look at the SSAC and the people running it as some backroom dark star chamber that's out to get the kids. At the end of the day, the SSAC, the rules are made up by the schoolmasters, the principals, the member schools make up the rules they're going to go by. It's just the SSAC directors carry it out. And that's their job, is just to enforce it and carry it out. So they're not up there crafting, say, okay, can we make this crazy rule up to hurt kids? That's just not it. And so, they want to run a bill to audit the SSAC every year, like they're up there sitting on a stockpile of money and they're skimming off the top or something. And it's like, and the state auditor, they're doing it anyway. Thank goodness. But it was almost like a finger poke in the eye. Okay, we want to run a bill here just to cause you grief, kind of thing. And I don't know why we're doing that. I mean, and there again, I don't know why we as a legislature, when 90% of those delegates up there had no idea what they were voting on or the implications that it was going to cause. I mean, they want to stand up and say this is a freedom bill, or just let the kids play was the cry. You really, unless you've been there and coached and you've had to cut a kid,
right.
Unless you've had to cut a kid, that's one of the more anguishing things you've ever done. And I've cut kids I wish I'd have kept kids I wish I'd have cut.
Right.
But it's a tough thing to do. And unless you've been in those shoes, you're up there voting on something like that and forcing the hands of coaches and parents to have to make those decisions. We had no business doing it. And we need to go back and fix it and get it right, put it back in the hands of the people that's what they were set up to do.
Well, Dana, I appreciate you coming on. That's our overtime, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you, and we'll be back.
The opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of WVRC Media, its management, employees, or sponsors. Contact Carl Lee on email, letstalkcarllee@gmail.com, or text 409-422-7539.